Thomas, when I first got started in the business, I had a lady tell me, no matter what happens, you got to stick and you got to stay. Got to stick and stay.
Stick and stay.
Yes. And so even during those times where, things were slow or I wasn't quite having the success I wanted, I always remember I got to stick and stay. And I tell agents now, I said, listen, I know you're probably thinking about quitting, but what if I had quit?
That's real. This is Thomas Roach, Director of Marketing with Senior Life Insurance Company. We are at the home office in Thomasville, Georgia, and like always, we are all fired up. Today on the podcast, we have an amazing guest. It's somebody we've been trying to get on the podcast for a minute, but we haven't been able to until today, but that's just how it works sometimes. Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Charaka. Charaka, how are you doing today?
I am awesome and amazing, Thomas. How are you?
I am doing well, and you are very amazing. You are an amazing person, and I'm so excited to have you on the podcast today.
Well, thank you.
Now, how long have you been with Senior Life?
5 years.
5 years. And you've been doing a lot of amazing things with the company. You've always, since coming to Senior Life, have always done very, very well, always put up very big numbers, and you are a very motivated person. If we were to talk about motivation, what are some of the things that motivate you?
Well, Thomas, what really, and a lot of people, when I first came to Senior Life, I actually had a pretty slow start.
Okay.
Just life happens. And sometimes it takes a minute just to really realize what you have your hands on and, for it to click, and this is a process.
Yes.
And so, and that's really important because sometimes it takes some time, and I had a pretty slow start. However, what really keeps me driving, what keeps me going is the overall opportunity.
Yes.
I always knew I was destined to do something great, wanted to do something big. And so here with the partnership with Senior Life, it would just pair me with the vehicle that I needed.
Okay. Now, what were you doing? You were working for another company before you got with Senior Life?
Right, I was.
How long did you work there?
I was there not quite a year.
Okay. So you were there for a year. You wound up coming on board to Senior Life. But what were you doing before that? Because, I really always like to hear people's journeys and how they got to Final Expense. But what were you doing prior to that? Because Final Expense in insurance and sales is not necessarily what people think about being when they grow up and all that. So
yes.
what was Charaka doing before Final Expense?
So prior to that, I'd been in the financial services, and I was in the mortgage business.
Okay.
Worked with Lewis in the mortgage business. And so once the real estate crisis happened, the crash, we had to, we closed down the mortgage, business around 2012 and had to find something else to do.
Oh, wow.
Because our incomes went to zero at that time. And someone had introduced us to insurance and to Final Expense. And I remember during that time where there were some guys that would come to the office when I talked to Lewis, and they would sit there like all day. And they would just hang out in the office, and I would be like, what are they doing here? And
Right.
And so eventually, I told Lewis, I was like, listen, maybe you should go do that. And so at that time, I went back to school and got my MBA.
Oh, wow.
And pursued that.
In what area?
Business.
Okay.
Yep.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. That is really awesome.
Yep.
And then, so Lewis winds up going on board to the other company and getting into Final Expense. How long until you wind up following him?
So about a year later.
Okay.
I ended up getting my license about a year later. And it took me a long time, Thomas, because I said, nope, not interested, something I would never do. And I saw, it took him a little bit of time to get started. And once I saw the type of income that he was making in a relatively short period of time, I was like, okay, I'm in. I got to do this.
So that was what it was. That was the moment that clicked with you once you saw how soon.
Exactly.
So how long have you known Lewis? Because y'all worked together for a while,
yes,
right?
Yes. And so I met Lewis back when I was in college at USC.
Yeah.
Yes. He had an ad in a local paper, our Gamecock newspaper online campus, he was looking for some office work. And so I applied and went and interviewed. And gosh, that was back over 20 years ago.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that either.
Yes.
Wow. So you started out doing like clerical type work with him?
Right. And became
Okay.
the office manager while I was in college.
Okay. And was he doing the mortgage stuff at the
Yes,
time? And
yes.
so then what kind of made you decide, okay, I'm going to go from like answering phones and filing papers to actually coming on board and helping him and working with him in the actual industry?
Well, Thomas, it was just my natural, skill set.
Yeah.
I'm just the type of person to where if I see a gap that needs to be filled,
Right.
I step up to the plate and do it. And that's just who I've always been my whole life.
Right. Right. So what were you, as far as like undergrad, what were you studying at the time?
Political science.
Oh,
I was
wow.
pre-law.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
That is really awesome. That's very
Yes.
impressive. And then you wind up working with Lewis for so long. If I were to ask you, like, what does Lewis mean to you? What would you tell me?
So what I would say that Lewis means to me, Lewis is a great friend.
Yes.
He's been one of my best friends, and he's been a great mentor as well.
Right.
He's helped me out tremendously, and he's really been hard on me, which has helped me out.
Yeah.
Because mentorship is not always easy.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not always a pat on the back. Charaka, you're doing a good job, but it's someone that's willing to sit down with you and to be honest with you. And to tell you the things that, you need to be able to grow and to stretch yourself.
Was that hard at first to take critiques
Oh,
like
yes,
that?
it was. Yes, It was very difficult at first for me to understand that relationship.
Right.
But once I did, and once I told him, listen, this is what I want to accomplish. These are my goals. And, when he said, well, listen, Charaka, this is what you're saying that you want to do.
Right.
And this is what it's going to take in order for you to get there.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. And you've stuck with him ever since. And you said
Yes.
it's been 20 years. That's quite a relationship to have with
Right.
somebody to be around that long. And now with being with Senior Life, you're growing as well. You're a manager with the company.
Absolutely.
You have a team of people underneath you. What are
Right.
some of the things that Lewis has taught you or shown you or influenced on you that you take now whenever you're mentoring others?
So the biggest thing, Thomas, is no complaining, and no excuses.
Right.
A couple of years ago, we have different themes, it seems like every year. And so one year we had a year of no complaining.
No complaining. Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah.
And it helped us out, and then the next year was no excuses. And so just learning those things and, and just being willing to do whatever it takes to get the job done,
Right.
to lead from the front. It's been important.
So whenever Lewis departed from the previous company and came on board with Senior Life, were you just basically following suit and following his lead, or did you stay over there and hang out for a little bit and then decide? What was the moment going from there to Senior Life? What caused that transition for you?
Well, there were some things that both of us were uncomfortable with, and so he came on first, and then a couple of weeks, it was shortly thereafter, I came on board with Senior Life as well.
I got you. What is it about Senior Life that you would say, since you've been here for the 5 years now? What about it is different, because you only stuck with them for a year? What would make us the kind of company where you would want to stay here for 5
Right.
so far?
Yep. So the Senior Life has a total package, and there's so many amazing things I can say, but everything.
Oh, well. All right.
The company provides so many opportunities for an agent to be able to get started, with little, no experience, to be able to come on board, to get the training, the development they need in order to be successful.
Definitely. So whenever you're like looking at people like who are looking to change companies or looking to get in final expense, like what kind of person do you look for?
Well, Thomas, I offer the opportunity to everyone,
Right.
Because we don't want to leave anyone behind.
Right.
And this opportunity can really change your life. That we have here at Senior Life. And it's definitely changed mine, and my family's. And so I don't want to, leave anyone in particular out. So I'm able to talk to everyone and share with them the opportunity that we have here at Senior Life.
So also, like, one thing we've been talking about, we just had our recent trip to Nashville. A continuing theme that keeps coming up, which is an amazing thing, is women in the industry. Typically, this is stereotypically probably considered a man's game,
Right.
in a lot of respects, in a lot of ways. And it seems like on our company's top 10 or top 20 or whatever, there is a lot of women, probably predominantly women at this point, if we really were to look at it. Like, how does that make you feel as being a woman in this industry and then being with a company where it seems like a lot of women are really stepping up and doing such big numbers and big things?
It makes my heart warm. It makes my soul melt to see, the females and the women that we have here doing such an amazing job. I'm just ecstatic that, I'm the number one female agency manager,
yes,
with the company.
Yes.
I'm so proud of that. And to see these young ladies come on board with us, get started, hit these record-breaking numbers month after month, climbing to the top, it's just amazing.
Do you feel any kind of like responsibility or anything like that? Because I want to say whenever those things really started happening, I mean, in a lot of respects, you were on the forefront of that. You were one of the first ones to really step up. I believe in a very long time, you were one of the first women agency managers to do 100,000 a month and a lot of things like that. Like, do you feel like you're on a forefront? Do you feel like you have a responsibility, or is it just kind of a natural thing and you're just happy to be a part of it?
Yeah, I definitely feel like I have played an important role in that. And so that's why I want to continue to, raise the bar and, continue to go higher and higher.
How do you like balance, like, one thing, if you mention Charaka around other people, if we talk to agents and other agencies, RVPs, people across the country, everybody has such great things to say about you. I've never heard a negative thing from somebody else, even though we're competitive against other companies, but agents are always naturally competitive with each other, going for the number one spot and things like that. That's a major part of it. But how do you manage the balance to be so competitive? Because you are very competitive. You do big numbers and big things, but at the same time, you're such a sweetheart. How do you do that?
Thomas,
how are you a pit bull and a sweetheart at the same time? Like, how does that happen?
Well, I think it's naturally just who I am.
Yeah.
I've always been that way. I've always been involved with different things throughout my whole life where I was put into competitive situations. And, I was always taught to win, to give everything my best, to put my best effort and foot forward. And so that's who I am.
Yeah.
And that's what I always do. But at the same time, I love people, and so I think it's also good to support others, to encourage others, and, to help uplift others as well.
Yeah. And then just let the numbers on the board
exactly
do their part.
Absolutely.
Because everybody, like I said, everybody always has such great things to say. They're always excited when you come around. And like I said, there's that competitive nature, but they're still so ecstatic to see you. And that's very nice and very awesome and refreshing to see. Kind of talking about, being a manager, when was it that you decided that you wanted to go from just personal producing to recruiting, bringing people on board and managing people? When did you decide that? What was that moment?
So I made that decision. The company had a leadership meeting retreat in Georgia. I think that was in 2017. Okay. And so we set our 90-day game plan. Okay.
Oh,
so
yeah,
definitely. Remember that? It was and prior to that, I had kind of did a little bit, but it just wasn't really serious about hiring. And so it was at that time we set our 90-day goals where I really became serious about building. Okay. With that in mind, and just talk about something a little personal, and if you don't want to talk about it, it's fine. But you had some family struggles. You're originally from South Carolina, right? Right. And you had to deal with your father, and his passing, and you were very much a part of being around him during that time. So what was going on then, I guess, to help paint the picture? So going on during that time, my dad became ill. And so it was very, we're a small, close-knit family. And so it was very important to me, to be there with him during that process, and it was very difficult, for me, because when you see your loved one, change and go through that process, it's hard.
Yes.
And so throughout that process, I was able to take a lot of time off and spend the time that, I needed to spend with him. And I was able to do that because of this business, And so I was even able to work and get leads, nearby him, and so that was another thing that was important to me as well. So that allowed me to still continue to work and do what I needed to do. And so my father did pass away in 2016.
Okay.
Yep. And so, just like I said, was able to spend the time I needed to be there, and even with my mom.
Right.
And so, and during that time, it was a lot of life-defining moments and things happened during that time.
Right.
And my dad was the primary breadwinner, for our family. My mother had been a homemaker. And so her household income changed,
Yeah.
Once my father passed away, because she no longer received all of the income, that he received.
Right.
And so that became a challenge, and so at that time I made the decision. I moved back to left my home in Columbia, moved back to the upstate. My brother had a new family, new wife, new house, new baby, and so he was very concerned, and we talked.
Right.
And so I made that sacrifice and went. And so during that time, there was another defining moment that occurred as well. Okay. Because Thomas, I knew that I had an opportunity that could help her as well.
Okay.
And so I'm proud to say that ever since that time in the fall of 2016,
Right.
that I've paid all of her, bills completely.
Right. Right.
And she's never had to worry about anything from that point forward.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's a lot of stuff for a person to juggle, and you still were able to focus on work to a degree. But I mean, how hard was that? I mean, because if anything were to happen to my parents, and my parents literally lived down the street from this office, I don't even know how I could maintain. Like, how were you able to maintain during that time?
I would say my faith.
Yeah.
My father was also a pastor, and I grew up in the church.
Okay.
And so that was, our faith, religion was a big part of, that was instilled upon me and who I am. And so I relied heavily on that. And also my why changed. My why became greater than just myself.
Right.
And what I wanted, and what my goals were.
Right.
And so once it became greater than me, and it just wasn't all about Charaka and who I was and what I wanted.
Right.
That also helped to propel me to that next level.
Definitely. How cool is it though? Like, for anybody who's working a regular 9 to 5, if you were to move to a totally different part of the state, you have to get a new job. How great was it to just be able to maintain the same career and the same company and the same agency and all that, no matter where you were at?
That was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's why I love being, here with Senior Life, because we provide that opportunity, even if you're looking to, change states, go to a different area, we have a place for you to go to work.
Definitely. You were such like I said, I use the word amazing because maybe my vocabulary might be limited, but you are such an amazing person, and to step up and do that for your family really says a lot, and to see, to do all that at the same time, dealing with somebody who didn't just like pass right away. It was a long, prolonged kind of thing. It really shows how powerful and how strong you are. And so I just have the utmost respect for you. Thank you. Being around you puts me in awe. It had before, but that definitely adds to it. So maybe talking about something a little bit more positive, a little more upbeat. You've recently, correct me if I'm wrong, you have an office in Atlanta now?
Right.
What's that about? Mountain. What's going on there?
So we were growing, the business was growing in that market, and just made a decision at that time, because I always lived in South Carolina. I traveled all across the country.
Right.
And so even personally, some of my closest friends are in the Atlanta area.
Right.
And so just made a decision that it would be good, for me to move.
Definitely. So now you have residents in multiple states.
In multiple states, right, exactly. So I have an office in Stone Mountain, and just helping people.
Yeah.
Just being able to help more people with this awesome opportunity.
Definitely. So what are for the Atlanta office now in the Atlanta area, what are some of your goals? What are some of your ideas for the future for that?
Well, our next goal is to get that area up to doing more production and more business there, and being able to hire more people. Also looking at the potential ability to do a telesales office in the area as well.
So what is, because you primarily do field sales as a personal producer. What is that like, kind of the transition going from personal producer in person to personal producer over the phone? Is that like a hard thing to do for you?
I don't think so. And I'm always up for a challenge.
Right.
And so having a lot of agents now coming that's looking to have an interest in telesales and want to be able to almost provide them that opportunity and the atmosphere to be successful in the proper training and everything they need.
Definitely. So always up for a challenge. It's going to be exciting to see what you do in that area. I mean, it's such just a robust, very populated area where, people are really looking for opportunities there. But I mean, why Atlanta though? Why not Charlotte? Why not somewhere in the Carolinas? Why was it Atlanta specifically?
And I did consider Charlotte as well. But I went with Atlanta because I did have a couple of agents there, a small growing team, coupled with the fact that some close friends were there. So I've, felt pretty comfortable, being able to have people there that could kind of point me in the right directions and places, which it took me a while, to complete, which I haven't, completely transitioned, but it took me a while to kind of work my way into it.
I got you.
But I would say those are the two biggest factors that played a role in deciding and choosing Atlanta.
I got you. Well, it's going to be very exciting to see what you do in that area.
Thank you.
What are, you mentioned some of the goals that you have, but what are, if we're talking goals short term, what are some of Charaka's goals short term?
Okay. In terms of?
Just in general, like what are some of your goals for yourself, for your agency, industry, et cetera?
Well, this year I'm hoping to achieve 2.5 and for team-wide for our agency in production.
Definitely.
So, excited about, going up to that challenge.
Yes.
And achieving that. But, even right now where we are, Thomas, for the year, we're almost where we were last year, where we finished at last year.
Oh, wow.
Yes,
and
sir.
We're halfway.
Right, we're halfway. Exactly, right.
That's amazing. And then now what about goals like long term? What are some of your long-term goals?
Oh, wow. So, really excited about the future,
Yes.
Where we are long term. I see 10 million, in my future.
Can I borrow $5? Just $5.
Absolutely.
When that happens, let me just hold
Yes,
$5.
sir.
That's awesome. That's amazing. When you're looking at recruits, so when you're talking about recruits,
Right.
everybody, a lot of, I don't want to say everybody, but a lot of people have like a preconceived idea of the kind of person that you need to hire. When you're looking at recruits, when you're looking at people, what are you looking for? What is the actual thing? Is it years of experience in the industry? Is it brand new? Is it what are some of the traits or abilities or things that you look for specifically?
I'm looking for someone, Thomas, that has a strong desire to succeed and someone that has a work ethic.
Do you worry at all about the fact that you have such a strong desire about bringing on people that may not have quite the desire? Do you have any hangups on that or anything?
Not necessarily, because I don't force my what I do or my, my beliefs on someone else.
Right.
And like I said, this is a process that evolves as well.
Definitely.
But, if there's someone who wants to win in life, you can tell, when you meet them, when you talk to them.
Right.
Like I said, I was that person years ago. I just didn't have the right vehicle in place.
Right.
I went back through some paperwork and found where I got my first tax ID number when I was in college.
Right.
So I always
Right.
So I always knew that I wanted to do something.
Right.
That there was more, there was something greater. I just hadn't found the perfect match.
Right.
So if there's someone that kind of knows that they want to achieve something in life, there's goal oriented.
That's all you're looking for.
That's what I'm looking for.
Doesn't matter if they're at McDonald's or doesn't matter if they're
Nope.
already in the industry or anything, just as long as they
Right.
have a strong desire.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm under the assumption, I think it's a fair assumption that you're going to be leading by example in a lot of
Absolutely.
ways, in a lot of respects. Just kind of thinking about all that stuff and just kind of like moving forward. When you think about yourself and senior life and you think about these recruits and everything, you said that there was moments in your career where there was kind of like it took you a while to kind of get started. How do you exercise patience. Do you have patience with others, or how do you guide and mold them whenever you see somebody under you that might be off to a slow start? You know, a lot of people in this industry, it seems, are really into the instant gratification.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But you said for yourself, as much of an all-star as you are, as amazing as you do, there are moments where you had slow starts.
Right.
How do you handle a slow start with a new agent, or even a current agent, an existing agent?
Right. So it's all about, you know, building that relationship, you know, with the agents, and to be able to help them, you know, that regardless of where they are, even if they're going through a transition or through a period, that they can still do the business, and just making sure they stay plugged in, you know, and doing what I can to be able to help them get through that period, and making sure that I always coach them up.
I got you. How important is it to be a coach? How important is that kind of thing whenever you're trying to build a team?
Oh, it's instrumental.
Yes.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely, it is.
Is that something that you learned through Lewis? Is that something you figured out on your own? How did you figure that part out, like as far as being a leader and some of the important aspects of being a leader?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, you know, I had always been a leader my whole life.
Right.
You know, just even coming up high school, I mean, you know, I was this person over this, you know, everything you can imagine.
You were in all the clubs,
right?
After-school
Exactly. All
and
of that.
that.
Yes. You know, I was student body president. I was this, you know, and just continuing on throughout college. And, you know, I became a manager, you know, early on, you know, in my career, I was leading people. And so that's something that I developed over a period of time, and just from life experiences.
So it was just very natural.
Became very natural.
Very natural.
Very natural.
In high school, I was on yearbook staff, and I had 2 lunches. That kind of explains myself a little bit. So what I like to do when we do the podcast, you know, when we have a guest, I want to make sure we cover everything. So I always ask, like, is there anything that you would like to say, whether it's to our current agents, whether it's to Senior Life, whether it's to me and Kent, whatever, is there anything you'd like to say before we get out of here today?
You know, Thomas, when I first got started in the business, I had a lady tell me, no matter what happens, you got to stick and you got to stay. Got to stick and stay.
Stick and stay.
Yes. And so even during those times where, you know, things were slow, or I wasn't quite having the success I wanted, I always remember I got to stick and stay. You know, and I tell agents now, I said, listen, I know you're probably thinking about quitting, but what if I had quit?
That's real.
You know, seriously.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, you know, so you got to stick and stay.
Stick and stay.
You got to stay plugged in.
Yes.
You got to stay close to the fire.
Yeah.
You know, and even during those times where you may experience a dry spell, or you may not be getting the production or income that you're looking for,
Right.
you still got to stay plugged in. You got to still communicate, you know, with your coach, your mentor on a very regular basis, because that's something that's critically important to your success.
It's about the long term.
Right, absolutely. This is all about the long term here.
It's a marathon,
you know,
not a sprint.
Exactly. And I always tell everyone it's a process. You know, this is not a lottery ticket.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
And it's honest. You know, it's not a lottery ticket. It takes work. I mean, you have to be willing to go to work.
Definitely.
And what going to work is, Thomas, you know, we're not out here doing a lot of manual labor.
Right.
We're simply talking to people.
Right.
That's what work is.
What we're doing now.
Exactly.
But with the Slice app.
Right.
That's the difference.
Right. And so into the home office staff, you know, everyone here is absolutely amazing. There's not a better partnership, you know, a better company I can imagine doing business with.
Well, I appreciate you saying that.
You guys are amazing.
Well, we really do appreciate that very much. So
yes.
We do appreciate you taking time today and hanging out with us on the podcast. I am totally in awe of you and how hard that you work, and how that you still do it, and you're just so amazing, and just so sweet and so nice at the same time. Still a pit bull when it comes to the numbers, but you inspire me a lot, and I just think you're amazing, and I just appreciate your time today.
Thank you,
and you
Thomas.
coming and hanging out with us. So
absolutely, anytime.
Definitely, we're gonna wrap up this episode of the All Fired Up podcast. This is Charaka in the building, who's been hanging out with us. An amazing person, an inspiration. We appreciate you. We appreciate you for coming.
Thank you.
And like we always say, it is Senior Life all your life.